The western Gulf Coast could see some tropical development, and millions will need to watch. What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. All right, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot to talk about today. We have Tropical Storm Christina that is currently moving off the coast of Nicaragua, Honduras, and El Salvador. That is the system that is going to be entering the Gulf, and potentially some development is going to be going on over there. Models are still forecasting some sort of development, including the ensemble, so we're going to be talking a lot about that today. Boris is kind of weakening, and it has made landfall so far, and we'll briefly touch upon that, but the main story is going to be Christina and the carryover effect it will have in the Gulf. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive right into it right here. Starting off with the NHC, we have post-tropical cyclone Boris. It made landfall. It's expected to be dissipating very shortly. 30-mile-per-hour cyclone, 1,004 millibar pressure, currently located at 16.9 north, 98.9 west, just on the coast of Mexico over here, moving northwest at 7 miles per hour. That's the last we will probably hear of Boris over here, but we have Christina that we're going to need to talk about right here. Here's the situation. It is a 40-mile-per-hour tropical storm, minimum central pressure of 1,006 millibars. Location is 12.5 north, 87.7 west, and it is stationary off the Nicaragua, Honduras, El Salvador coasts over here. So let's go ahead and take a quick gander at the cone very quickly. Here is our cone. For you guys are here, that's the interactive cone. Rather, I want this. This is post-tropical cyclone Boris. Right here. Let's go ahead and go to Christina and take a quick gander at the cone. Here we go. So here's the situation that we have. It's expected to make landfall in El Salvador in the next, I believe, 24 hours or so. The next 24. Actually, the next 24 to 36 hours, I believe that is. It's expected to remain just on the coast here, bringing some pretty significant impacts to Nicaragua, Honduras, and El Salvador as well. We're going to want to watch out for that before it makes landfall and then makes its inevitable trek towards the Gulf region as well. We're going to want to take that factor pretty seriously, but let's go ahead and quickly read a little bit of the discussion. Here's the situation. Expected to remain a 40-mile-per-hour tropical storm. It is battling some wind shear at this current point, as you can see on satellite imagery as well. We're going to want to watch out for that regardless, though. It's hugging the coast, so and its ability to tap into the warmer waters hasn't really materialized because of that proximity. It's not tapping into the strong ocean heat content that is currently being produced just off the coast, those coasts right there. So we're going to want to watch out for that as well. But still, heavy rainfall associated with Christina will impact coastal portions of Central America through Thursday. This rainfall may produce life-threatening flooding and mudslides, especially in areas of steep terrain. So that's what we're dealing with from the National Hurricane Center right here. And now that that's we've kind of gone over the basics right here, let's go ahead and shift over to our ensembles, and then we can get more into the main meat of this video. So here is our European ensembles right here. This goes out about 72 hours right here, just to kind of give you a starting point. So the situation at hand right now is we have kind of a split according to the European ensembles. Main bulk of the models want this system to move into El Salvador and head towards eventually the Gulf region over here, moving a bit further to the north, maybe clipping the Caribbean before shifting and impacting the Yucatan Peninsula right there. But you're also seeing a pretty large minority of the models still having the system head off the coast of El Salvador, Guatemala, and towards the Gulf of Tehuantepec over here in Mexico. That's also a factor that we're going to want to pay attention to, and we're going to keep you updated on, because regardless of where the system may go, it's still going to bring impacts to a lot of people. And as we go ahead and go to 4 days out, this is the next 24 hours, that continues to unfold. And then you're also noticing this area right here. You're noticing a lot more ensembles starting to really pop up across parts of the Bay of Campeche and the Western Gulf region right here as this system starts to reemerge over water, potentially tapping into the very warm waters of the Southern Gulf right here, up to 29 degrees Celsius, which is about 84 degrees Fahrenheit for those living in the United States and her territories. We will get to that more in just a few minutes, but by and large, my goodness, you're definitely seeing a bit of an uptick. Not as much power, but you're definitely seeing an increase in ensembles really starting to get a bit more excited of this than what we've seen previously. Then, as we get to 120 hours out, this is 5 days out. My goodness, look at how concentrated the ensembles here are according to the European. I have been watching this for well over a week. I have never seen this much concentration according to the ensembles right here. There's not too much power with it, mainly keeping it around a tropical depression or a tropical storm strength with the max winds potentially up to 50 miles per hour with this system. But my goodness, the amount of ensembles we have seen here now compared to what we've seen even in the last couple of days has increased quite dramatically. It's definitely something we're going to want to pay attention to, and it looks like a landfall in El Salvador does make this a bit more possible, and that's kind of why the European is loving this scenario a bit more than it was previously. Gulf Tehuantepec, it would move further up to the north, it would be hugging the coast before making landfall in northeastern Mexico or southern Texas, according to some hurricane models. But this right here, this new development, actually in the long run does benefit this system. It makes landfall in El Salvador, moves through Honduras and Guatemala, and then emerges off the western Yucatan Peninsula into much more open waters as well. So that's definitely something we're going to want to pay attention to regardless of development. And then as we get to 24 hours out, another 24 hours out, this system does end up making landfall around here, anywhere from the Veracruz region up to northeastern Mexico to near Texas, actually, as a matter of fact. So you're definitely seeing that ensemble support still there. A couple of ensembles up to 50 to 60 mile per hour tropical storm force winds right there. So we're going to want to watch out for that. But the other thing I do want to emphasize, though, is models may be one thing, but conditions are a whole other ballpark. So when we get to the operational European, I'm also going to be bringing up the conditions as well and going over those, and then kind of going over the other runs as well to kind of see how this is going to pan out right here. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and shift over to our operational run right now. As this tries to load up right here. Perfect, ladies and gentlemen. What we got for you guys right here is the operational European. We're going to be mainly watching Christina over here. Boris is a post-tropical cyclone, still bringing impacts to some areas near Guerrero and Oaxaca and Mexico, but it is expected to dissipate in the next few hours if it hasn't started to already. But as you see with Christina, it's hugging the coast right here, around 1,008, 1,007 millibars right here. Becomes a bit of a low-pressure system as it remains stalled off the coast of Nicaragua before making landfall in El Salvador in the next couple of days. And then as it starts to emerge, potentially in the Caribbean coast initially, you're definitely starting to see that start to pop up and then shift further over to the west into parts of the Bay of Campeche off the Yucatan Peninsula before starting to slowly get its act together by the time we get to 5 days out. Here's where we're at right here with the operational run. The operational has the system relatively broad, but it's a bit further to the coast than what we've seen in previous runs. And then you have the system kind of doing its best to get its act together. It's a situation where the ensembles are definitely picking up on this quite a bit more than the operational runs. So what I am curious about is the ensembles. If the ensembles continue to show this kind of signal right here, then the operational run, if this continues to hold, will most likely have to catch up. This is kind of a situation that I've noticed throughout my experience with hurricane season. The ensembles really love to pick up on things first, and it takes the operational runs a day or two for them to start catching up to the ensembles. This could be a situation where that happens right here as well. It's definitely a good possibility considering how many more ensembles, according to the European at least, are screaming for this possible situation to happen right there. And a lot of those ensembles are 1,005, 1,004, 1,003, even down to 1,001, according to a couple of them that I had noticed in there. So that's kind of what we're paying attention to for right there. But the system does end up making landfall in the next 5 days. bringing potential impacts to northeast Mexico and parts of southern Texas over here that we're going to want to pay attention to as well. So that's your operational European. My curiosity is getting the best of me, so I want to know what exactly the conditions are going to be, because we're looking at the water temperatures, and I can go ahead and show you these right here. Water temperatures in this part of the Gulf over here, 29 degrees Celsius, 84 degrees Fahrenheit. Water temperatures are definitely there. They're also there in the Caribbean if it crosses into that region as well and starts to kind of develop a bit of a warm chord system over here as well. I'm not saying it's going to develop, but I'm saying that maybe it gets a bit of a jump start, moves over the Yucatan, and then continues to consolidate over there. That's a kind of a possibility I've noticed with some of the ensembles as well. But ultimately, you have your water temperatures over here. I want to take a quick gander at the ocean heat content as well. And here is your ocean heat content. OHC across parts of the Caribbean and in the Gulf over here, definitely pretty interesting. And based on what I'm seeing with the ensembles in this part of the Gulf right here where my cursor is, you can kind of see it as I've zoomed in the editing phase of this video. You're looking at 50 to 75 OHC. And if we do see a situation where it emerges further to the east and a bit off the western coast of the Yucatan Peninsula over here, it runs into that higher area of ocean heat content. What ocean heat content represents is how warm the water is and how deep down that water reaches. That's kind of a measurement of a fuel tank, as I like to it's kind of the perfect analogy in this instance. How much fuel is in the tank right now? Well, in this case, because it's early June, there's not as much right now as there will be, say, in July and August, but you're definitely looking at 50 to 75 OHC. So that's plenty of warm water, and there's plenty of depth for this water to really tap into for the system to as it crosses into the Yucatan. So we're definitely going to want to watch out for that and take this a bit more seriously. Now, what I do want to look at is the possible hindrance to this, that being the possible wind shear and the possible dry air aspect of it as well. I didn't mean to click on that. Let's go ahead and move back to here, and let's go ahead and go to the upper dynamics for our wind shear when I get the chance. Perfect. So here is the wind shear that we're starting right here. This is going to be a bit of a wild card scenario right here because you do have this trough moving through into parts of the western Gulf over here. I am watching, paying attention, kind of diving down from Texas as well, starting in the next 48 hours. And then as we get to about 72 hours out, what we're noticing with this right here is there is a break in the wind shear that I am paying attention to. It's not a particularly large break, but it is a break nonetheless, and it's definitely something that we are going to want to pay attention to right here. If this system starts to get its act together and it uses the lower shear values to kind of enhance that and allow for it to consolidate, even if it's for just a few hours, then it's definitely going to take advantage of that as long as there's not too much dry air and impacting it, and we will get to that in just a second. But here's your wind shear. At least for right here, you're definitely seeing that pocket continue to consolidate and continue to emerge. The time this system does start to emerge off the Yucatan Peninsula, definitely lower shear here than I'm noticing right here. There is a bit further shear a bit further to the east that I am paying attention to. But regardless of that, if it moves through this region right here and starts to get its act together, then you're going to have a situation where, okay, this may be a broad system. It may not be able to organize fast enough for it to really start to strengthen quickly, but it can develop, and this could potentially bring some pretty significant impacts. We're talking flash flooding, maybe some higher wind gusts with this as well. Going to want to take it seriously, and this low pocket of wind shear actually persists throughout its entire lifespan. As this, even though this trough is starting to emerge in parts of the Gulf once again and potentially slam shut development once the system does make landfall, but you have this emerging pocket of wind shear that I am paying attention to right here, and that's why I'm still thinking that tropical development is still very much on the table, at least for right here, because you're seeing an increased pocket of low wind shear, more so over the last couple of days than I have seen previously. And it's definitely something that we're going to want to pay attention to and take quite seriously, regardless of development or not, because you're not going to see much wind shear hindering the system once this emerges off the Yucatan Peninsula, according to the ensembles that we talked about earlier. And once that happens and it emerges and moves through parts of the Gulf through that low shear, all bets are kind of off, but except I'm not, by saying that, I know I'm kind of implying that something big's going to happen. What I mean by all bets are off are, okay, development is definitely possible with this. We're going to want to take this kind of seriously. So that's what we're seeing with the wind shear right here, according to the European. Definitely a more favorable pattern than what we've seen previously. Let's go ahead and cross-check this with the dry air, because I do want to kind of get a full comprehension as to what's going on. Dry air is kind of interesting with this right here. You're definitely seeing some dry air further to the west, over here off the parts of the Bay of Campeche and in the Western Gulf along the Texas, Louisiana coasts over here that you're going to want to pay attention to. But you're also noticing this big moisture pocket that's starting to emerge as part of the system right here, and kind of seeing what happens in the next 48 hours will be very telling right here. Yes, you're definitely going to see a little bit of dry air over here, but that gets mixed out pretty quickly, actually. And by the time we get to 84 hours out, a lot of the dry air that was kind of hovering in the southern part of the Gulf over here is mixed out pretty considerably, and that is a pretty big shift from what I have seen in previous runs. Yes, there's still a little bit of dry air that needs to be mixed out over here in the southwestern portion of the Gulf over here, but it's definitely a lot more mixable than what we've seen even 12 hours previously, and that is a very interesting situation, and that's kind of concerning to me right here. You're not seeing very much dry air. You're seeing less wind shear, less dry air, more chance of development, in my opinion. Now, we're going to want to take this kind of to pay attention to it. A lot is subject to change, obviously, but my goodness, if you had told me a couple of days ago that the wind shear was going to have a much larger pocket and the dry air was not going to be nearly as big of a factor as previous, I would have told you, okay, that's definitely a possibility, but we're going to want to wait and see how things go. I did not expect the amount of moisture to surge, nor the amount of shear to fall off like I have seen today. So that is definitely a bit of an upswing compared to what I've seen previously, and we're going to want to pay attention to it. If we do see some development from this, based on what I have seen and based on the incoming conditions, I do not think it's going to be like this massive hurricane that's going to act explosively intensify. I'm not here to say that. What I think is going to happen is, at the very max, we're looking at maybe a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm for two reasons. The first reason is because the system is going to be very large and very broad when it emerges off the Yucatan, and it kind of pins into my second reason, being there's likely not going to be enough time for the system to be over water for it to fully consolidate, develop a core, and start to really tighten its pressure gradient enough for it to strengthen anything further than that. Conditions, yes, are getting better and better, but as long as that system remains broad, it's not going to necessarily get too strong, even if you see a lower pressure on some of those ensembles and on some of the operational runs as well. So that's what we're looking at right here based on conditions. We're going to go ahead and look at the track models and the intensity based on the hurricane runs right here. Track models are definitely supporting everything I just told you. Track models are having the system making landfall over here near the Guatemala-El Salvador border on the hurricane runs, and a bit further along the coast over here. Definitely seeing more time over water according to these hurricane runs. The H-Wharf is the exception over here. It's kind of the dark horse moving near the Gulf of Tehuantepec. If that were a situation that were to happen, then this system would have a lot less time over water and a lot less of a chance to develop. But now looking at this over right here, definitely seeing more time over water, more time to develop, and more impacts potentially for parts of the northeastern region of Mexico and parts of southern Texas as well. Southeast Texas, I know I've been getting a few comments asking about that. I would definitely be put on notice with this because of just how broad the system is going to be. I would still take it rather seriously regardless, and I'll keep you updated on how things will progress in the next 24 hours. But then looking at the intensity runs, definitely have come down from what I've seen previously, mainly staying at tropical storm strength like I've mentioned for right here, mainly because the system is still battling 30 to 40 knots of wind shear over the East Pacific. right here. So the models are kind of all over the place with this in terms of the intensity. So hopefully in the next 24 to 48 hours, we get a clearer view of how this pans out. And I will, as always, keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. I really hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you are new. The goal, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. If you'd like to help out, hang out, or ask us questions, join the Storms United Discord server. Link to that is in the end screen. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.